So I am Christie Lambert. I am a counsellor for Fremantle, and I'm also the cabinet member for communities and Safer City at Southampton City Council.
So, in your role on Southampton City Council, what areas of crime sort of need the most sort of reduction, if you will, in the city?
So something that we've noticed a lot of trends, particularly in the nighttime economy. It seems like the violent crimes, we started to see a slight incline. When I joined last May in cabinet, there was a sort of steady incline of violent crimes in the nighttime economy, particularly violence against women and girls, um, something that we would call kind of stranger or non-stranger crime, violent crime. So if someone were to go out on a night out and meet someone, um, they might be at risk of attack, if things didn't go the right way for that particular person. Those sorts of crimes were on the rise. So we've done a lot of work around that with our partnership, of increasing safety training, putting training into the planning applications, for bars, any pubs, anyone participating in nighttime economy, that they were aware of some of those trends that we were seeing. And we've also seen a lot of a rise in youth knife crime. So there's been a lot of work around that and trying to kind of raise awareness and create opportunities for people to surrender those knives over to the authorities as well. And also just kind of generic retail theft. We've also noticed a rise in that. So since I joined, part of my role has been trying to kind of strengthen that partnership working, and trying to get the right partners in the right places, so that we can cover each other's blind spots.
So, in terms of the nighttime economy, I suppose it's quite a maybe quite hard compared to other areas of crime necessarily to get data on, because it might not necessarily be as wide reported.
Say that again, sorry.
So I was just saying that crimes on the nighttime economy might be harder to sort of reduce because there might not be as much data compared to sort of crimes that are committed during the day.
I think that's some of the problems that we've seen with crime in general. Is kind of hard to understand the data. So sometimes you wonder, if there's a spike in reporting, is that because people trust us and they feel comfortable reporting? Or if we see a drop in reporting, is that because we've successfully dealt with the issues? Or do they just lack trust in the police and lack trust in the council? So you can kind of take it both ways. So that's why we can't just rely on the reporting data. We have to do more than that to really understand what's going on. And it involves speaking to people and going out there. And there's no substitute for boots on the ground and just physical bodies out there, watching, making sure, observing the nighttime economy, especially, the high streets, to make sure that theft, is declining, because we were seeing a rise in retail theft as well, and abuse of shop workers, things like that. So there's really no substitute for physical presence, physical police presence, and that really helps us identify whether we're on the right track. Because, like you say, people may or may not report these issues, but they may still be happening. So it's really important for us to get a really clear understanding of what the issues are and where to prioritize that resource.
So I suppose an increased police presence can also deter potential criminals as well, but also it can result in more crimes being reported as well because they feel they can actually speak to somebody.
Exactly right. So when we see kind of a rise in reported crimes, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It could mean that people just trust the police and they're warming to the partnership and they feel comfortable and trusting us with these issues. Because some of the statistics that we were seeing is that actually people didn't feel comfortable coming to the partnership, whether it's the council or the police. They didn't feel comfortable. They didn't feel reassured that their problems would be dealt with. And actually, by seeing more people report, it kind of reassures us that actually they do trust us to deal with these issues. So that data on its own isn't really enough, but it's one tool in the arsenal. It helps us paint a picture of sorts, but there's a lot more to it, and that's just a bit more complex than that. So yeah, physical police presence absolutely helps people think twice before they're committing any crimes.
And since you've come into your role, are there any encouraging signs in terms of reduction in crime that you've seen?
Absolutely, yes. So I think when I first started, the partnership was still kind of finding its feet. Um, it's not just the police and the council. We have lots of other organisations that are part of the partnership, NHS as well, dealing with addictions and homelessness. So it's a kind of holistic view at tackling crime, because there's lots of reasons that people might turn to a life of crime. They might make those decisions that um, that they regret most of the time. So it's tackling it in the most holistic way, and using our resource more wisely and more efficiently. And something that the partnership's been really working on is really honing in on those key issues that we are prioritizing and holding each other accountable. So having really smart targets that we can say, okay, why haven't we done better here, here, and here, and really hold the right people accountable. And also just help each other. It may very well be that, the police can't be everywhere all the time, but we may be able to assist them. So it's important for us to understand where do you need us, and where do we need you, and how can we work together on these things in a true partnership fashion to really get a grip on these key issues. And I think we're really starting to see the aftermath of that. So we're really starting to see the effects of working smarter, and working more efficiently together, and covering each other's blind spots, and being a little bit more effective in how we approach things, and not just kind of everybody off in silos, doing their own thing, because it's quite wasteful. So we're using our resources much more wisely.
So I suppose it's a matter of improving a communication across sort of different sectors that deal with crime, the council and the police, etc.
I think that's the magic word, communication. It's something that all of us could do a lot better at, I think, because there's so much to do. You can kind of put blinders on and just go, go, go. But actually, really opening up that conversation with all of the partners and understanding, okay, what can you do better than us? And how can we support you in doing that? And vice versa, what do we do really well that you can support us in? And really making sure that the limited resources that we all have, that we're using them as efficiently as we possibly can, and covering as much ground as we possibly can. And that's the only way we're going to get these issues tackled.
And a lot of crime crosses across different sort of county lines and things. And so, how do you work exactly with other city councils and county councils?
So our partnership is within Southampton, but we do look at the other data, the statistics of other councils. That helps us understand, okay, who's doing things well, and how are they approaching these things. And like a lot of councils that are doing them well, we're finding that communication is key. And that seems really obvious, but when you're in our little silos, it can be really challenging sometimes. So it's just making sure we're in constant communication, and any issues that spring up, that we're communicating with our partners and making sure that we're not kind of treading over each other's toes, and doubling up on the same work, that we're allowing our partners to work where they need to work, and they're allowing us to work where we need to work, and we're working really well together.
I suppose also crimes that may be quite prevalent in Southampton might be less prevalent in neighbouring cities, or vice versa. And that's another factor that I suppose you would have to consider when sort of working with the councils.
Absolutely. I think Southampton is very different from its neighbours around Hampshire. Um, I think we have issues and crimes, particularly with like youth knife crimes and things like that. You don't really see that in kind of rural Hampshire. They don't have the same issues as us, but the crux of it is the same. It's that communication piece. It's working effectively with partners. It's constantly in communication, and understanding where we all are and what our priorities are, and where we can and can't work well together, and using that resource more efficiently. I think that's the key for us, and that's something we've been really working hard on. And also just making those smart targets. So understanding, okay, what are we actually trying to achieve here? Because it can be really difficult to measure that success, particularly when it comes to crime. It can be challenging to measure that. So it's trying to cover ourselves, speaking to the public. Do you feel safe? Why or why not? Do you trust the partners to handle the issue? If you've come into a problem, would you contact the police? Would you contact the council? Why or why not? And dealing with those issues as they come.
I suppose the most important thing exactly is the public feeling that they can speak to somebody who can resolve it. Because of course, if they don't feel they can speak to somebody, then the problem won't go away.
Absolutely, they have to be able to trust us in handling these problems. So if they don't trust the partnership, it doesn't matter what we do and how well we work together, these issues will remain a problem. So it's a key part of the work that we're doing is reaching out to the public and gaining that trust and really working on that, and letting them understand that actually we're listening. We want to help. Tell us how. How do you want us to work, and what are the issues that prevent you from coming to the partners, whether it's the council or the NHS or the police or whoever it may be. What's stopping you from coming to us, and how can we address that?
I suppose also Southampton's quite an interesting shape in this way because it has obviously a port, but there's large parts of the city that are much further north that have realistically not much to do with the port at all. So in that roundabout way, is it quite a challenge in a way dealing with crime in Southampton? Because of course it's not very densely packed. It's quite sort of sparse compared to other cities.
I think we have a good understanding of the key areas in Southampton, the hot spots, and where things are more prevalent and where which areas. We understand our wards. The local councillors really know their wards, and a lot of that feedback comes from them on where are those hot spots. We know that certain wards struggle with certain crimes more than others, and I think that's the part of the partnership that we really struggled with in the past, is having a churn of police that don't really understand that, because sometimes the way the police work is very different from how we work. So they're more reactive, and so then they'll tend to send their resource all over Hampshire. So we get this churn of police that don't know the wards, they don't know those hot spots as well, and so they have to relearn it. And so that's been some of the challenge over the past couple of years, is actually trying to have that consistency in the policing. So it's not just having more police, but having the same police who get to know those key hotspots. They get to know because a lot of the offences that take place are reoffenders. So they'll get to know those reoffenders. They get to know the wards. They get to know the areas that are likely to cause trouble and what kind of crime to expect in each ward, and really come up with a strategy to tackle that rather than acting more reactively.
So I suppose, yeah, some wars in the city will be pretty different from others, and the
Yes.
more a police officer spends time in that ward, they'll just get an understanding of the intricacies and the little issues that might be quite hard to articulate, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like, your hometown, your home street better than anyone else. It's the same for a beat officer, a neighborhood officer. We've been really lucky to have been granted neighborhood officers in Southampton, and they do patrol those areas, and they are starting to get to really know, okay, these are the areas I need to watch out for, and these are the kinds of people that are likely to be out and when, and what kinds of crimes to expect, and to really come up with a strategy to tackle that. It makes a difference when you know the area and you know the ward. So having that access, and that's come from Labour government, thankfully, who granted us that funding to have more police resources, and that's something we really desperately need, because there's just no substitute for that. I think we've tried lots of other things and lots of other approaches, but there's just no substitute for a physical police presence in the areas.
And what's for people to understand, what is the sort of, when it comes to dealing with crime across county borders and things, how does that sort of relate to central government? How much does sort of central government get involved in terms of crime in Southampton, and how much does the city council work on it?
So it's a good question. So central government has awarded some funding to the Police and Crime Commissioner. Now, the Police and Crime Commissioner is the one that kind of allocates that funding throughout all of Hampshire. That might change with local government reorganization. There may be a kind of a rejig on how that operates, whether there's still a Police and Crime Commissioner. But at the moment, she is the one who determines what resource people get. Thankfully, she did get gifted by the central government quite a large part of funding so that we can get more police resource. But I think some of the issue comes from the actual recruitment process for police can take quite a long time. So I think to recruit a brand new officer without experience can take anywhere from 18 months to 2 years, full stop. So from start to finish. So it is quite a lengthy process. So even though you have the funding to actually get the boots on the ground, there's still some time in there. So I think that's something we're waiting for. So I think she's in the process of allocating that resource, but that could take up to 2 years if we're lucky to get the actual resource in place. The council kind of work on more kind of civil issues, sort of the smaller scale issues, so nothing criminal. Anything that isn't criminal, we deal with. So that tends to be kind of parking fines and things like that. And we kind of support the police in that. But we work closely together just to help cover each other. We have street pastors that go out and help support, and CCTV monitors that help alert the police when they see something coming on. So we work really closely with the police to help them tackle some of those really big issues that happen, especially in the city centre.
And I suppose a lot of crime we've seen in recent years has sort of been a result of the pandemic, with people losing income and maybe resorting to crime. Has there been, in the years since the pandemic, we're 5 years out now, has there been a sort of uptick away from crime that we've seen?
I would say it's actually, we're starting to see kind of a downturn on crime. I think that's more to do with the partnership working and being that strategic. I wouldn't say it's to do with the pandemic as much, because I think that's kind of always been an issue for us even before the pandemic. So I think it's more to do with the resource and how we tackle things, and getting the message across that sort of behavior, certain behaviors aren't tolerated. I think if people can get away with something, they do try. And I think because they have been able, historically, they've been able to get away with certain behaviors, they have. But now I think we're much stricter on actual enforcement. And I think that's the key, is the enforcement side, because I think if you can't enforce, the crime just continues. The cycle continues. And I think just being really strict on enforcement and showing that we're cracking down on this and we're serious, I think that's made a difference.
I suppose also it's depending on the crime, it'll depend on rehabilitation or sort of punishment, really, because of course quite a lot of those who commit crime will reoffend. So I suppose it's trying to work out how best to sort of rehabilitate criminals so they don't recommit.
Exactly. And that's part of the partnership working that we do. So trying to get people in the right cycle and get them, especially with youth, I think trying to get early intervention. So as soon as you spot that there might be a problem, to get them into the youth justice scheme or to the early intervention schemes, where we can capture them earlier before they're on that path, because it can be really difficult once they kind of become those offenders, they become reoffenders, and the cycle is really difficult to break the cycle. So we work really closely with all of our partners, Saints Foundation, NHS, Go Southampton, lots of partners who are really keen to just work with these people and try and get them off that path.
And well, today's obviously quite rainy, but we're supposed to be heading into summer. Is there a sort of seasonal trends you've seen in terms of what times of year maybe are more prevalent with crime, or what crimes might be more committed in other times of year?
It's a really good question. Yes, summer is obviously a challenge. So you have a lot of people, young people out of school, who are looking for something to do. So that sometimes adds to that. Nighttime economy is always a challenge. So we do have sort of seasonal trends that we monitor, but that's part of, again, not to beat the same drum, but the partnership is really meant to be looking at these things and looking at the statistics around the seasonal challenges and responding to that, so that we're not being reactive, that we're being proactive, because we know the trends, we know what's likely to happen, and we can put the right resource in the right place at the right time, so that we're capturing that before it happens, rather than knee-jerk reactions every time something happens. So we are getting much better at that, but it's always going to be a challenge.
So I suppose it's about anticipating what
Mm-hmm.
crimes will be committed, where they'll be committed, and all of that really, because of course that then limits the likelihood of it being committed in the first place. If, for example, police are on the ground, around a football stadium, just for example, or wherever that might be likely to have a crime committed, if there's sort of an anticipation.
Yeah, exactly right. It's anticipating what's likely to happen. We know the trends of our city, and I think that's really key. Is just having partners who know our city and know those trends and know where those hotspots are, because they do come in cycles, and there shouldn't be any surprises in that regard. And we should be able to know where to allocate our resource. But it's trying to get the right resource as well. So access to more police in the city would be great, so that we can have those boots on the ground. Because as far as I'm concerned, that is the only way forward. Is there's no substitute for police presence, particularly in the high streets in the city centre. It's really important for people to see the feedback that we get from residents. Is they see the police and they feel safer immediately, even if nothing else is happening around them. Just seeing the police around makes them feel safer. And we also know that it makes people think twice before they commit a crime. So it's really important for us to have access to that resource. But yeah, like you say, being able to anticipate what's going to happen and where it's going to happen is really important for us.
And obviously, we were talking about a relationship with the different sort of organisations you can speak to, such as the council or the police. Is community officers an element in that? Is it trying to get more community officers on the ground as well?
Community officers, yeah. So we have a lot of resource within the council. Is that what you mean?
Yes. Yeah. Just in the cities and in the town centres and things.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's part of the strategy that we're employing, is that trying to understand, okay, where can we put our community officers where we're not overlapping with the police, so that we're not treading each other's toes. Because I think actually that some of the challenges have been that lack of communication. So really understanding, okay, where are our community officers best placed, where are police best placed, and how do we work together, and how do we help each other cover each other's blind spots and really tackle these key issues. So we've been really lucky. We've got some great community officers that go out and they do patrol, and people speak to them about some of their issues as well, and they can bring that back to the council. And it's some of the work that we've been doing is trying to kind of streamline those processes for people. So how can we make it really easy for people to report some of those issues? Because historically it's been, people find it challenging when they report something to the police and the police tell them, no, that's for the council, and then they go back to the council and the council say, oh no, that's for the police. So really streamlining those processes so that we're not bouncing people back and forth, that they can find somebody, contact them, give them the complaint, the grievance, the whatever it is, and then we can run with that.
Because as we were saying earlier, the relationship between the public and the authorities, such as the police and the council, are they're very important, obviously, to put it mildly. And if that trust breaks down, that can result in more crime.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it means that we're blind in certain areas. If people aren't kind of reporting these things, we don't have that sight over what's going on. So it's really, really important for people to report. It's so important. Even if they don't think it's going anywhere, it really does. It helps us paint a picture and helps us allocate resource. So it's really important for us to get that right, so that people do report to us, because whether they're reporting to the council or the police, it helps us identify those key areas where we need to allocate more resource. We are a data-led organization, so all of that data is really important for us. So when people say, oh, I didn't bother reporting it, it breaks my heart, because I think that is literally how we make decisions. So it's really important for people to feel like that trust with us, that they can come to us with those problems, with those reporting, with those complaints, and that we're going to deal with that.